talk about your scrimmage a little bit? You went at night, which was pretty unique and pretty cool. Could you talk about what you thought of it, and any big plays or anything that stood out to you?
Yeah, it was good. It was the first time that we've gotten under the lights with the guys. Able to create a pretty good atmosphere, hit it on a beautiful night too, so it was good. To change it up, we've been practicing, almost exclusively in the morning, so trying to get guys used to the, obviously getting up early and preparing for some of the 11 a.m. games, and then the flip side, getting in the stadium, getting under the lights, and preparing for some of the night games that'll be here down the line. So it was good. It was pretty competitive. Offense started out pretty quick, and then defense certainly kind of responded in the kind of the middle back half. So ended up overall on the day being very, very back and forth, which has honestly been about how the entire camp has gone. It's just been kind of each side just trading shots. There hasn't really been a lot of sustained dominance, I would say, by either side. So as coaches, you've appreciated the competitiveness. It was a chance, I think, to get some of these young guys under the lights for the first time, and a lot of them did well. There were some. It's a little bit different down there. It can feel a little bit different, so I think our guys will learn from it as we lead into the next scrimmage and certainly the games. But yeah, I mean there were some really nice big plays on both sides of the ball. There was a lot of explosive plays offensively and a lot of explosive plays defensively. Wasn't any turnovers in the scrimmage. A lot of sacks. I think the defense had 6 or 7 sacks. Again, offense had, especially early in the scrimmage, had a number of explosive plays. So a lot of good, a lot of correct. We also got a lot of great special teams live work as well. Injury-free? Pretty good. Only guy that's nicked up for us right now, Ryan Peoples, has an ankle injury. He'll miss the rest of camp and potentially the first part of the season. But there are a couple other nicks and bruises, but nothing else substantial right now.
Lincoln, players have good days and bad days during camp. How do you deal with the younger players that maybe have a bad day to get them to put that behind them? And then are there even older players that sometimes you have to encourage a little bit, or have they been through the process enough they know what to expect?
Well, you do. I mean, it's a fine line because you want it to mean a lot to these guys, and you work so hard throughout the year to be ready for camp and be ready to compete, to play. And so you want them to take it personal, but at the same time, they've got to be ready to continue to move on. And one thing we stress to our guys, whether it's an old guy or a young guy, is that's part of our evaluation process. We probably evaluate you harder and pay more attention after something hasn't gone your way, whether it's from day to day or even from one play to the next, because again, at this level of ball, nothing's going to be perfect. And we want the guys that respond. We want the guys that are finishers. And guys, as a coach, that no matter what happens, you're going to get their very best play after play after play. And so, we preach that. It's obviously easier said than done. And I would say right now we do have a core of veteran / leadership type players that do that pretty well, and that certainly have been instrumental in helping our young guys understand the importance of it.
Yeah, Lincoln, following up on something you said in that first answer to James, you talked about the practice scheduling. What were the benefits of sticking with the daytime morning practices once you get into the season? Why did you make that change? And were there any challenges, especially with academic schedules, things like that, and getting that lined out?
Yeah, no, it was something we had talked about doing for years, and we made the decision to do it well before COVID took over last year. It takes a lot of planning to get it done, certainly on the academic side, and getting guys' schedules shifted more towards an afternoon-based schedule. But just when we looked at the week, I think the biggest thing for us that we felt like was it was a chance to maybe just bring them up here one time a day. Typically our evening practice schedules, when we did that previously, it's fine, and probably in some ways maybe a little bit better for coaches because you had the mornings to prepare. But what we found out is unless you wanted to, it was tough to get the practice, lift, meetings, all that done in a block in the evening. So typically they would come up in the mornings, get any type of lift, workout, whatever was going on, class, and then back up here. And when you look through the entire season, it's just those hours add up, and coming back and forth up here over and over when you're trying to be as efficient as you possibly can be. And this allowed us to do more kind of one-stop shopping, where guys are be able to come up here, get everything done in the mornings. If they have time in the afternoons and want to come back up on their own, that's certainly their choice, but they can get every required thing done for us in the morning. So it's been good. I think our guys have liked it. It's not like they're having to get up at 4:30 in the morning. It's a reasonable time, but they typically are out of here by around noon, and then have the rest of the day to focus in on their academics, have some time away from here to recharge. Coaches wise, it's pretty good. It's a bear getting ready for the Tuesday morning practice, especially if you've had a late game the previous game. But after that, it's it's nice, and it makes our schedules a little bit earlier. We're probably up here typically earlier than we would have been on the other schedule, but at times get home and get a chance for the staff to see their families as well.
How early do you usually wind up getting up here?
Depends on the day. Early in the week, it's pretty early. Later in the week, as plans are in and things start to settle, there is a little bit. It's not obviously physically, but there is a little bit of, for the coaches as well, kind of building yourself back up to get ready for the game. So as the week goes on, you find a few more hours of sleep in there.
Lincoln, I want to ask you about Jamil. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, he's the only of your newcomers who didn't have a high school season last year.
Yes, I think so.
So was there any rust for him? I mean, coming in, and how's that gone?
A ton, honestly. He had a tough summer. He didn't play, and then he played an all-star game right before he came up here and had a pretty substantial hamstring injury coming in here, and so he was limited. And so it was a tough summer for him. It was good for him. He needed it, but wasn't in shape, wasn't healthy. He was one of the guys in the class that we had never met until the day he got here. I mean, so he had a lot of stuff working against him. But I give the kid a lot of credit. He's done a nice job this camp. He's gotten himself in shape. He's a playmaker with the ball in his hands. He's made a lot of big plays so far in camp. He's still learning a lot and still certainly in the early stages, but there's a lot to like, a lot of bright spots. So I think he's a guy that you could potentially see. Obviously his career goes on, but even within the season, I mean, he's going to get better and better. And I think the longer it goes on, the more he settles in, he'll have a real chance to contribute, because he has some, especially for a guy we never saw in person. You kind of say, what's this guy going to be like walking in the door? And we've been excited by what we've seen so far in camp.
Hey, Lincoln, you guys are a little more than a week into camp. Are there any players or position groups that have really stood out to you so far in camp?
Oh, I mean, I don't think any position group as a whole has stood out in a negative way. I mean, everybody has their days right now, and the days are certainly becoming more consistent. I mean, the depth on the defensive line is impressive right now. I mean, it's we can roll several groups in there of pretty darn good football players, and a lot of young guys pushing for time there. So I mean that depth is really impressive. I think the first group on the offensive line has had a really solid camp so far, doing some really nice things. I could say the same thing at linebacker. I mean, again, they just kind of roll guy after guy after guy after guy, and they're all good players, and provide a lot of depth. I would say, been excited about how the secondary's played, really have. I think there's kind of more new guys in the mix there, guys, rotating, playing multiple positions. You're seeing, I think, a little bit more steps towards kind of mastering our defense. And again, to me, one of the biggest indicators is a guy can move around and do all kinds of things. That was such a benefit for us last year, when Trey Norwood was able to do that in the back half of the season. And I think right now we have multiple guys in our secondary that give us the ability to do that, and that's been certainly one of the bright spots.
Yesterday, you guys ran a social media graphic with a pretty inspiring quote from Curran Winfrey. Could you talk about his progression this offseason and just the leadership role he's taken up with the team?
Yeah, he really has. He's come a long ways. He's probably within the locker room one of the more beloved members on the team. I mean, he's just he's so for everybody in that room, and the guys see that. He's got a passion for playing the game and works really, really hard at it. He's a fun guy to be around off the field. Always got a smile on his face. I mean, just very full of life. And he's just brings an energy when you're around him, and I think it doesn't matter who it is on the football team. I mean, a lot of people really have taken to the guy, and yeah, and then I mean you see the intensity, the way he plays, and he's started to become willing to speak up, and that he's able to do that because of the work that he's putting in behind the scenes and the improvements that he's made in a lot of areas. So, you love it when either side of the ball, you love it when one of your big guys and one of your, kind of guys that you expect to set the tone physically, kind of mentally for the entire group, you love it when they talk. Listen, great leaders can come from anywhere, obviously, any positions, but it just feels different when it's a big guy. It just does. I mean, it just feels different, and so he's done a really nice job of that.
Do you like horror movies as much as he does?
No, I don't. I'm not a big horror movie guy, but he keeps me up to date on them.
Hey, Lincoln, the first time you talked this preseason, you mentioned the transfers, how big of an impact they've had, and how it looks like they're going to have an impact on future recruiting classes and not sort of taking project players anymore. I know every year is different, but how do you foresee that looking sort of across the board? Is it less high school guys you sign? Do you talk to your coaches about, less guys per position? How's that look in actuality for you guys?
In the end, not that it's our intent, but it certainly is going to be less high school guys signed. I mean, I think that's going to be everywhere unless they change the rule on the 25 initials. I mean, that would obviously change things, and we may be headed for that at some point because, again, you look a few years down the line, and I think we're going to be in better position than most people, but even there's some things down the line for us that make us nervous as far as the roster. So it'll be interesting to see how that evolves, but if it does stay at 25, no question there's going to be less high school guys signed. I mean, no question. I think for us it's become where in years past, if let's say you're taking, 3 corners in a class and you had 2 corners there at the end, you might go grab a guy there at the end to throw him in to kind of hit your quota in a way. Whereas now, if we're not darn sure about a guy, we're going to hold the spot and we're going to go get a great transfer. And again, kind of like we said before, even before that, I mean, if I had a forum right now with every high school recruit and parent in America, just not having nothing to do with Oklahoma or any specific school, the one thing I would tell them is, we said it here the other day, you're competing against every other transfer in America, which right now that's in the thousands. And so the game's changed, and people got to adapt with it. And, and until they change that 25 initial, or if they do, but until that happens, it's going to continue to be less high school guys across the country.
Yeah, Lincoln, all the but all the troubles you guys had to go through to have a season last year, the officials had the same thing. Mm-hmm. They went through all kinds of stuff we never even think about. How did you think they ended up doing, just as a group, in terms of calling the games, communicating with you, getting all the stuff done that they normally do?
I thought they did a tremendous job. No, you're right. It was hard on those guys. I mean, you think about, one, they're used to being able to travel around in the off season. I mean, they're competitors too. They get graded as well, and so they want to perfect their craft. Those guys want to work championship games and bowl games and playoff games, and I mean, it's a big deal. And our league's done a good job of making it extremely competitive. So they were at a disadvantage a lot of ways. I mean, not being able to get out to work, not being able to work much together. The communication was definitely more difficult just with the masks. They had more things that they had to enforce, some new rules down the pipe. I mean, there was a lot. But, no, I thought they did a great job. I really did. I mean, as a whole, it obviously took a toll on everybody. But I can't remember looking back and thinking that, there was a huge drop-off there, which I think is a credit to the guys in our league.
Has Greg Burks made it up yet to
has.
chat with you?
He has.
How did that go?
It was great. No, it was good. Saw Greg probably 2 weeks ago, somewhere in that range. Yeah, he came up. He's been really professional. I've loved dealing with him the entire time. I think the Big 12 hit a home run when they hired him. He does a great job communicating with the coaches, and he's not afraid to tell you when he thinks he's right or they're right, and he's not afraid to admit when he thinks they're wrong, and he does a really good job communicating process, and has been very helpful and very responsive. And we had a great visit with him a few weeks ago.
Okay, sorry, time for one more. Joey?
Yeah, you've seen your team for a week and a half now. I think it's pretty well documented. Not having spring last year, how much that hurt everyone across the country. How much of a tangible difference can you gauge right now on just your team's progress compared to last year? Every year is different, obviously, but
Yeah, no, there's a lot of things you can. I mean, you can tell we had spring ball. I mean, you definitely can. I mean, it's we're a lot further along. You know, for having that spring ball, and then obviously not just having a musical chairs of players in and out in practice. There's been a whole lot more consistency to it. So yeah, certainly our team's a lot further along, but I would imagine everybody else in the country is too. So competitively, still got to try to get the most out of it. I like what we've done the first week and a half, but we've set some pretty clear sights on kind of this back half of camp, starting with today, that we've really got to take this time and make a big jump before we get into our mock game week, and so it's got to be attack mode all the way through. And so far, it's been positive, but long ways to go. All right, thank you all. Good to see everybody.